And we're recording. I'm Director of Programs at the Laundromat Project. Pronouns are he, him, his. And I'm here to, we're working remotely. So I'm at my home with a bicycle on my back and, some plants and books. And so with my beard and my glasses, so all fun stuff. We're here to present today our Create Change program. It's an info session. We're here to answer all your questions and do a presentation. So we hope that you can do that at the end. We'll be sharing that today with my colleagues, Tiara Austin, is our programs associate, and Lady Sasha Jones, our artist engagement manager. So we'll be taking turns throughout the evening. And so I'll talk a little bit about the LP, and then we'll pass on the program of today. And just before we start, just wanted to let folks know that there's artificial intelligence live transcription. If you see at the top of your screens, it's like there's a way to select that if you would like to see that happening. It's not perfect, but it's helpful. It will open a separate window and you'll see it. And that's available. And also, please add your comments and questions to the chat so we can answer the questions. We'll do it at the end of the day. Hopefully the presentation will be able to answer your questions as we go. And yeah, we'll be recording the session and we'll be putting it on our YouTube channel. And so we just wanted to give you a heads up on that. And that is a tradition now at the LP of dual rank acknowledgement. And so the Laundromat Project respectfully acknowledges that we are in Brooklyn, the occupied and unceded lands of the Canarsie, who are part of the Munsee Lenape. We recognize them as the regional stewards of this land and pay respects to their elders, past, present, and future. We acknowledge and offer deep gratitude to this Lenape land and that supports us as we gather here right now together. And I invite you to join me in the acknowledgement, the respect, and the gratitude, and showing the same for the land, whatever you might be. Okay. So I'll talk a little about the Laundromat Project and I'll pass it on to my colleagues. So thank you for being here tonight. At the LP, our mission, is we advance artists and neighbors as change agents in their own communities. We do this through our flagship program, which is the Create Change program, which is our focus of today. It's a residency and a fellowship program. And we also do our work around creative community engagement and community building initiatives and public programs. So we do this in different ways. But today's about Create Change. And so, an importance of this is that we envision a world where artists and neighbors and communities of colors can work together to unleash the power of creativity to transform lives. So it's all about artists working with community and engaging folks together. Just to ground ourselves, everything that we do internally as staff members at the Laundromat Project, and also as we work with our communities of artists and our communities in BED-STUY and beyond, is centered on our values. So just briefly, you can look at them more closely on our website, but wanted just to ground ourselves so that everything that we do is guided by these values here that you see on the screen. So nurturing creativity, be people of color centered, creating change, valuing place, writing our own histories, be propelled by love, and practicing abundance. So just wanted to share that with all of you. And just briefly, the way that the work, it functions is, we're talking about creative activation and be locally grounded, where our residency programs, our fellowships, community learning, public programs, and partnerships are connected with folks in a community level, but also as art as the focus and culture. And so let's see. And with that, just wanted to leave some space to let folks know that we're in the process of a move to our long-term home and the beautiful, amazing, historically incredible BED-STUY in Brooklyn. And so we're in the midst of moving right now. So our space is under construction, and we hope to be back sometime in the fall this year. And so, we're looking very closely at COVID so that, we'll be able to keep those considerations in mind. And also wanted to say that this is the first time we'll have our office space and our program space in the same location. And it's a very exciting time for us. So more soon, but just to give you, whenever we say in person, if there's possibilities of doing that, this is what we're talking about, in BED-STUY and on Fulton Street. And so, and just to say, because of course, there's things that we would love for this program to be in person. It has traditionally been in person. We, of course, changed the format of the program this past 2 iterations of the program, being 100% virtual. We're in the midst of planning and thinking about ways that we can do this program partly in person, if possible, and partly virtual. So we keep some of the virtual things in mind, and also, so we're basically right now in the midst of planning. So just keeping that in mind. And of course, we're looking closely into all the developments around, the pandemic. So we understand we're not out of it, but we would love for us to be gathered in place eventually. So we're thinking about that very deeply and very thoughtfully. So we just wanted to uplift this real quick. And so with that, I'm gonna hand it over to Lady Sasha so she can talk more about our program and all the great things about it. So thank you.
Thanks, Atwe. Next slide. Hey, everyone, and thanks again for joining us. My name is Lady Sasha Jones, and I'm the Artist Engagement Manager at the LP. My preferred pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm a Black woman wearing a red and blue striped top. And I'm not sure if you can see much of my background, but if you can, it really doesn't include much besides a brown bureau. What I'm going to do is take us through the history of the Create Change program before sharing an overview of the fellowship program itself. As Atwe shared, please do not hesitate to drop your questions, comments, reflections, etc. in the chat box as I move along, and we'll make sure to return to all of those towards the end during the Q&A time. Just for an image description of the slide that we're all looking at, this slide features a cutout of artists seated in a circular formation at shared desks during a workshop with one of our facilitators, Ebony Noel Golden, who is seated near the projector towards the front of the room. I'm going to stay on this slide as I share a little bit about the history of the Create Change program. So since 2005, Create Change has supported more than 200 multidisciplinary artists and over 85 community-based projects. The upcoming 2022 program will mark our 17th residency cohort and the 12th fellowship cohort. Just to share, for those who may not know, Create Change began with the residency program, which originally invited artists to develop projects within their local laundromats and to engage their neighbors around art and their local context. Today, artists produce public art projects across a wide range of sites. Tiara is going to share a little bit more about that, but yeah, anything from street corners and gardens to theater stages and community centers. And more recently, as Atwe has shared, many of the projects have taken place entirely in the virtual space during this time over the past 2 years. The fellowship program was launched as a platform to kind of support the professional development of emerging artists who are interested in modes of social practice and community engagement. The program was to complement the rigor of art making that occurred during the residency with a more rigorous workshop training series. During both, Yeah, we can stay here. I'm going to move to next slide in a second. But during both programs, just to share, artists will meet the overall structure is that artists really meet with a diverse roster of peer artists, activists, professionals, curators, and change agents who offer a series of diverse strategies around creating work at the intersection of art and civic action. And it is really also structured within a kind of cohort community building structure as well, where artists are invited to learn and create within a cohort setting to practice peer-to-peer exchanges, collaboration, and mutual support. Next slide, Altoy. And so to provide an overview of our pedagogical framework, there are 3 learning blocks that really undergird our curriculum and in which our curriculum is shaped around. I don't know, TR, may you drop the guidelines in case folks would also like to read along that way? Awesome. A lot of this information is also on the website and in this wonderful PDF, our guidelines and programs PDF, but just to share a little bit, our pedagogy is reflective of our timeline, which is make art, build community, and create change. Participants within Create Change will work deeply within this framework throughout the program. The first one that we see up here is Make Art, which asks, what role does art, culture, and creativity play in making meaning, shifting narratives, and creating change in the world? Through this learning block, participants will examine a wide range of artworks across the fields of social practice and creative placemaking that really align with the LP's approach. Cultural asset mapping and leadership development. Asset mapping is a huge element and part of our program and something that we dive into over and over again. Next slide. So the second is Build Community, which invites artists to explore how can art and cultural practices build trust and accountability with the communities. Through this one, we aim to invite you all to explore approaches around fostering attunement with community rhythms, building reciprocal partnerships, and to really think about the art of meeting people where they are. Building community is at the heart of what we do, not only on the artist development, create change side, but also on another whole wing of our work, our community engagement work, and is deeply a part of our approach to entering into BED-STUY, as Altoy shared, moving into our new home. Next slide. So the third and final one is Create Change, which addresses power and leadership. Understanding that power exists within ourselves and within our communities. How do we creatively leverage power for equity and positive societal change? Through this learning block, participants will explore both personal and collective relationships to raise power and privilege in order to facilitate social transformation through art and cultural practices. I'm gonna, before going into the fellowship, I wanna just share a little bit about the program schedule. So can we go to the next slide so I can do that? And so I know this probably looks dense and it's just a a long list of dates and locations. But just to give you an overview of how we interpret those learning blocks through the program schedule you're looking at, next year program will encompass around 5 workshops, a series of group coaching sessions that both fellows and artists in residence have access to and engage in. Both programs also culminate in final presentation moments. You'll see that in the schedule, one in June for fellows, one in November for the artists in residence. And there are elements also of public programming for the cohort to shape themselves. So there's like open studio moments for artists in residence as indicated here, as well as for fellows. I'll get into a little bit more of this, but a little later on, but we're also hoping that there's moments for fellows to also develop and shape collaborative public programs as well. So you'll see that marked, I believe, somewhere in May on the schedule. What is not reflected here are a whole variety of things, from weekly office hours, which we offer, where folks can schedule time weekly, throughout the week. We set a date, we set a certain block of hours, and make ourselves available as administrators, curators, artists. You can also employ others outside of the programs team to check in with and chat with and talk to. So that's not reflected here. We also have a lot of artist community programming that we offer in connection with our growing alumni community. So we definitely like to make some inroads and connections between our current cohort and our alums. But yeah, this is just a really brief look at the schedule. Again, if you have any questions about it, if there's something that's confusing or you want to know a little bit more about a certain terminology, I know there's things there like doctor's hours that you may be curious about, just let us know, drop it in the chat. We're happy to share a little bit more later on. And Altway kind of already gave you a little bit of a hint into what we're hoping to do next year with possibly approaching having a more hybrid a more hybrid approach to the program, where you'll see some engagements are virtual and some stay in person. Again, this is a cautious anticipation around hosting the program in this format, but how we kind of modeled it, if we are able to meet in person, what we've scheduled in person are hopefully a lot of the workshops. So you'll see the workshops as in-person moments, whereas a lot of the professional development offerings, so things from coaching, mentorship, office hours, all that kind of good stuff, we're definitely, I guess, aiming to keep virtual regardless. And again, this is definitely dependent on if we're able to gather in place. And yeah, I don't know if there's anything else about the program schedule. Yeah, I believe there are more details that Tiara and I get in as we talk about the respective programs. So we can go to the next slide so I can dive into the fellowship. Awesome. So yeah, let's see. The fellowship program, just as an overview, many of you probably know this, but it is really aimed, the hope is to invite a wonderful cohort of artists and cultural producers who, again, are interested in developing and deepening a collaborative, community-based, and socially engaged creative practice. The program is shaped as an intensive learning practice model that really develops workshops and generating ideas and incorporating LP's model around community-based social practice, as well as a foundational approach. So when I say a learning and practice model, yes, there's the workshops, and we hope that you all are engaging and talking and in conversation with one another. But I believe since 2013, there's been this wonderful, rigorous practice format to the fellowship program, where we hope that the fellows have the opportunity and we make space within the program schedule for you all to put into practice a lot of the learnings and conversations and the discussions that really shape that first half of that 6-month program. This year, next year, not this year, in 2022, we're thinking about fellows applying with or thinking about or employing their own independent kind of cultural art projects that we hope will be incubated throughout the program and possibly will possibly be able to be developed towards the end of the year. I believe, again, that is marked on the program schedule. If you're looking at the guidelines as like May 1st to the 31st, sometime within May, the aim is to break you all up into groups and have you collaborate on developing a public program together that would be in connection with a lot of our community engagement work, that would be thinking deeply about BED-STUY as a hyperlocal site and space and community that we care deeply about as an organization, and especially in how we're showing up. What else can I say about that? Yes, this is what I wanted to say, is that it also, I think that says in person or virtual on the schedule, meaning one, again, if we're able to do it and gather and have projects and programs take place in the storefront, that is the site that we're thinking about. If not, then a lot of these programmatic engagements or developments will be virtual and digital. Maybe go to the next slide. I'll talk about the program format. Awesome. So yeah, I shared, the program format is shaped around a series of workshop trainings You all will also have individual and group coaching sessions. Those are with, these are shaped around cultural organizing. They're with our cultural organizing coach, Ebony Noel Golden. You all will have, you'll see on the schedule where there's 2 moments for fellows to have group coaching sessions. And then Ebony is very generous and also offers and invites you all to connect with her one-on-one during the 6 months. I don't know if anyone has experience with working with the coach before, but it is very generative space. One, to not only think about this work and some of the questions we're kind of posing through this program, but also to think more broadly and deeply about your own individual creative practices. So it's a wonderful professional development aspect and element of the program. So that's a big piece. I mentioned the weekly office hours with LP staff, and that the program will culminate in a public presentation in June 2021. Again, the fellowship is a 6-month program. It's scheduled from January through June. And yes, we're thinking of a hybrid model. Each fellow participant will receive a modest stipend of $500, which is a fairly new feature of the program. This year's 2021 fellows are the first to receive stipend. There's been quite a journey where the fellowship was the fellowship program was a paid program, something that artists paid to participate in. Then it became a free offering, and now we're offering small stipends for fellows to participate and show up and engage with these work and these ideas. Next slide. So eligibility. I'm just going to read straight off the screen, and if there's any questions again about anything that is here, feel free to let us know. Eligible candidates for the fellowship program must be at least 21 years of age. Unfortunately, we only accept folks who are not currently enrolled in a degree-seeking program, although many of our fellows are recent grads. We try and keep we feel like it's a very rigorous and time-consuming program as well. So especially with the 6-month timeline. So definitely looking for folks who are not in a program, any higher education degree-seeking program at the time. Folks who are committed to working collaboratively with their cohort members, as I shared. There is that practice model to the fellowship program. So working, if you feel like, if you believe and know that a collaborative-based approach and practice is a part of how you show up and like to show up or interested in diving into that, this is definitely a program for you. Folks who are in alignment with the LP values and POC-centered principles. This is definitely a big thing for us that we look out for. There's question, and TR will go over this later, the application around values and prior principles. And so definitely pay attention to that. If I can give you any tips or tricks, that is a big one to focus on and think deeply about. Folks who demonstrated practice or deep interest in socially and community engaged art. So definitely this is not the fellowship. If you're more concerned with strengthening a kind of solo studio practice, this is again a program for artists who are interested in thinking more collectively and collaboratively and thinking about their local context, the communities they're part of and care about. Whether that is new feature or a way that a mode you've been working in for years, we're flexible with that, but definitely looking for artists who are coming with that engagement and investment. Folks who are familiar with the cultural history and local issues impacting communities of color, and this should be changed, but yes, for this year, we are looking for fellows who are currently based in NYC. We understand that during the pandemic, folks have moved in and out of the city, and maybe there's a little bit of flex on that, but in the past 2 years, 2020, 2021, there's been a lot more flex in that. And there's been some exceptions over the years. I know that in the beginning, Create Change, there were folks coming from Philly and Connecticut and all different parts of the city. But again, as the program has taken on a more practice-based model, and are thinking about the 5 boroughs in particular, it just may be best if folks are based in NYC. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that's all I'm going to share about the fellowship right now. Again, as you sift through the guidelines, or if there's anything that I share that may be confusing, please drop a note in the chat so we can get to it later. Other than that, I would like to pass the mic on to you, Tiara.
All right, thank you so much, Lady Sasha. Hi, everybody. My name is Tiara. I use she, her, and they, them pronouns. I am a programs associate here at the LP. I am a Black woman with shoulder length locks. I have glasses. I have a beaded bang. I'm positioned against a brick wall as my background, and I'm wearing a gray shirt. So I'll be walking us through the residency program and the BED-STUY residency programs. If you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So the residency program is our flagship Create Change program that supports the development of participatory and community-attuned creative projects by specifically artists of color working within their community. So in this context, we're talking about community as it is explored broadly. So we're thinking kind of through both geographical community and communities of affinity or communities of identity. And so just to note that in the application, we do ask you to sort of describe your connection or investment with your proposed community. And that's something that we'll talk about in a little bit as well. And our residency program has shifted to accommodate our current moment, which will allow for artists' projects to occur digitally if you do choose that direction. And you may also elect for projects to occur and for you to carry out projects hybrid, so a combination of both, or in person. But the application would ask how you will ensure the safety of community members if you do choose to carry out an in-person project. And next year we are offering 2 residency programs. So I talked about the residency and there's also the BED-STUY residency. And so one is the longstanding kind of residency program, which is open to artists of color developing community-based projects across the 5 boroughs. But in addition to this program this year, for the first time, we are inviting artists of color who live, work, and are otherwise invested in BED-STUY to apply for this new residency program that I'll go over shortly. Okay, next slide. Thank you. So both residency programs are a year long in their format. They run from January to December. Financially, they offer a total of $20K to each artist, $15K in honorarium and $5K for production. And non-monetary support, as Lady Sasha kind of went over, includes the same series of workshop trainings that are open to the fellows, separate coaching sessions, but the same kind of cultural organizing focus coaching sessions for the artists in residence. But however, the artists in residence will also receive monthly meetings with LP program staff, as well as one-on-one mentorship with an art professional of your choosing. And that is a recently kind of added component to the program that artists have been super excited about. They can come in with anybody in the fields that they want to be connected with, and we try our best to make it happen and get them in conversation with someone in the field that they have been wanting to connect with. So that is a super nice component of that artist in residency. And additionally, there are public programming opportunities where artists in residence are invited to host a public open studio session that will feature their work and commission projects. So you can probably see past advertisements for open studios on our Instagram, or recordings of them if they're available. Another just great moment for artists to get their work out and invite their community partners, their people, to support them as they go through that. And cohort-wise, we are selecting 3 artist projects for the citywide residency and 1 artist project for the BED-STUY residency. Okay, next slide. Thank you. Okay, so ideal candidates for both residency programs would have experience with developing collaborative or community-based projects, demonstrate alignment with the LP values, have the experience or capacity to work in a group, have the background in community organizing and outreach strategies, be at least 21 years of age, is some of the same things that Lady Sasha went over, be currently based in New York City or have community connection to the city, be committed to co-creating a community art project, and finally be familiar with the cultural history and issues impacting the community that you're proposing to work within. Next slide. Thank you. And so for the BED-STUY residency, candidates would sort of meet all of the requirements that I just went over for the residency. And in addition, would be familiar with the cultural history and local issues impacting specifically BED-STUY Brooklyn. So we're looking for someone who lives, works, and/or shows demonstrated investment in BED-STUY communities in addition for the BED-STUY specific residency. Next slide. Thank you. Okay, so I just wanted to pull up the BED-STUY residency priority statement for this application cycle. So to help counter structural and systemic injustices of displacement and gentrification within BED-STUY, we will be prioritizing applications from these groups that are listed on the screen. And so that includes applications from generational and long-term, so 10 plus consecutive year residents, applications from individuals who identify as Black, Indigenous, Native, and or folks of color, applications from individuals in the disability community, including immunocompromised individuals, and finally, applications from individuals who identify as LGBTQIA+. So that's a sort of statement that will appear on the application itself. Yes, and this is just something that I wanted to uplift as a specific feature for the BED-STUY residency. Next slide. Thank you. Okay, so now we are going to pivot to the application review select section of the info session today. And so this slide on the screen is a blue to purple gradation background that reads the application and features Black and white image of 5 laundromat project artists, community members, and cultural organizers standing side by side with wide smiles and their arms intertwined. Next slide. And so now I will walk us through one of the
So if you head over to laundromatproject.submittable.com, you'll arrive here at our landing page of all our available and live applications. So today we're going to go over the fellowship application since that one has the most overlap with the residency and BED-STUY residency. Hitting apply here and then typing in an address to hit to save and continue on. And we've arrived at the application itself now. So the first kind of bit of information that we'll gather is some basic demographic information, including a bio, a resume, and whether or not you're in need of any accessibility accommodation. As always, for this portion, you can hit that you prefer not to share at this time, but we did want to sort of highlight the tech access needs that this program might entail, such as a consistent internet connection, a computer, and or a Zoom account. If you need any support with any of these things, feel free to indicate it here or share later in the selection process. The first question that we have here for you is, what is your motivation for applying to the Create Change Fellowship? So this is a question that's going to span across the residency and BED-STUY residency applications as well. And you can upload a written response if you so choose, but you can also upload a video statement kind of just detailing why you want to participate in this program that you are applying to at this particular juncture, what has led you here in your journey, in your career as a practitioner, a healer, or organizer, or what have you. The second question is, what LP values resonate with your creative practice and why? So Atwe went over some of the 7 LP values that we have, and we're really just asking you to respond to those values, to tell us which 1 or 2 or 3 of those values really are relevant to your practice at this current moment and are standing out to you. And you can learn more about them there via a hyperlink. And so the next section that we have is the community engagement section. And so this is kind of a section that has a few questions that overlap with the residency that I'll explain in a little bit. But for the fellowship, fellows are going to have the opportunity to intubate and execute a group project with a community of their choosing. And so though we're not requiring fellows share a specific project idea in the application process, we do want to get a sense of who your community members might be and what your intentions are. So with that, we're asking you to describe the communities you might want to engage through the fellowship. What is your relationship to said communities that you're proposing to work within? And so we have some additional prompters here to help guide you along that question. And this is a question that's definitely going to show up in the residency application as well. And then the second question is, what does working in community mean to you? And so just thinking through what's valuable about working alongside community members and how they might bolster your practice. And so again, this section has some repeat questions for the residency as well. But the residency is actually going to have a specific project idea that we require that you share. And so this section will be built out to include a lot of different sections that I'll go over. All right, so next is the work samples. So for work samples, we're just asking you to upload a maximum of 5 artworks that best represent your creative practice within the past 5 years. And so you'll see more information about formats. And so this question is really just to gauge, what is it that you create, for the panelists to really experience that. Since I know the application is written heavy, if you're a visual practitioner, this is, an opportunity for us to really understand what it is that you do in context of what you shared with us about your practice and your journey. And then we're requiring a checklist. So this checklist is really just to help guide us along, looking through your work samples. So title, year, things like that. And then we're moving along to the reference section. So the reference section here is just gathering some contact information for a professional or community reference that can speak to your creative practice. This person can be a collaborator as well if need be, but wanted to note that you do not need a letter of recommendation for this process. So we're just probably going to contact and speak to this person if your application advances to the interview portion of the selection process. And then last but not least, we have demographic information here. So for this, just wanted to raise that these questions are all optional. They do not have any impact on your eligibility for the program, and that review panelists will not have access to this portion of the application. So this is just for internal purposes. So yes, if you decide to answer them, yes, go ahead and feel free to do that. And now I'm going to pivot to explain a little bit more about the BED-STUY residency and the artist in residence.
All right, Atwe, can you go to the next slide? Okay, so just quickly to pull up some differences between the fellowship application that I just went over and the residency application. So in addition to all those kind of overlapping questions that I shared, we ask artists and residents to submit a project proposal in full detail, like I mentioned, that accompanies a timeline. We also ask more detailed questions to gauge your relationship to your proposed community. And we finally ask you to complete a project budget with a template that is provided in the application. But as always, feel free to reach out to us. We'll share our contact information if you have any issues with any of those things. And lastly, we ask if you'd like to be considered for the fellowship. So often if residents are not selected for the residency, they can be automatically pulled in to the interview for the fellowship instead. And then so all of those things will remain true for the BED-STUY residency, what you see on the right side of the screen there. But we do ask questions to gauge your relationship and familiarity with BED-STUY specifically, as well as questions related to that priority statement that I went over earlier. All right, so that is all for me. I'm going to pass it to you, Atwe, for that brief rundown of the open call.
Thank you, Tiara. Thank you, that was great. And so what happens after you submit your application? And I want to be quick. So just briefly, we have a deadline. This is the website where you apply. So laundromatproject.submittable.com. Follow the instructions as Tiara was saying. Key dates. So application closes on August 1st. So you still have a couple of weeks to go. There's going to be interviews October 1st for the residency and October 2nd for the fellows. And then we'll make a decision and let folks know whatever decision is made later in October of this year. So you get a sense of that timeline, and also just briefly, how does it work? So we do have a review process where our staff, and we have what we call the Artists and Community Council, which is basically a small group of art professionals from different organizations and expertise levels and so forth, so that they're able to advise us in this process. And so it's not only staff looking at the applications, it will be this external panel looking at the applications as well. And so the residency is about 25 minutes of an interview. And then, it's basically 5 minutes to pitch the idea and then 20 minutes to talk about it with a Q&A. So it's very informal. And this most likely is going to be virtual. So just naming that now. And then similar with the fellows, the idea is that they're group interviews. So residency, just one person at a time. And then the fellowship is group interviews. And it's about a little over an hour, 75 minutes. And, we'll have different group activities and different conversations as well. So you get a sense of like, what is it that you, how does it work after, you submit the application. And so lastly, I want to plug in before we move on to the next section is that, we also have what we call the Great Change Institute, which is basically a very short version of what we described, all of these things that we described before, our learning blocks and so forth. So if you don't have the time for whatever reason to commit to the program in a longer term, we offer, so half days, 2 half days intensive, get like the Cliff Notes version of the program. And it's paid. This is different things, tuition based. So if you're working for an organization, for example, and they can cover this $200. If you're an individual artist, $100. We do have scholarships and discounts. So don't let that be a deterrent. And so this is happening next week. So starting 2 Fridays in a row, July 23rd and 30th. If you're interested, you can find more information on our website as well. But that's all I have to say for now. And I'll turn it over back to Lady Sasha.
Awesome. Hey again, everyone. I'm excited to share this space, not just with my 2 colleagues, but also with 2 of our alums, Rochelle Jamila Wilbon and Shay Adebanjo, both of whom actually have taken part in both the fellowship and residency programs. In fact, Rochelle is currently a 2021 artist in residence working on a commission project entitled Afro Peach with collaborator Ogendi Odude. So this section of the info session will be shaped around hearing from both of these artists around their experience before opening up to your questions. I'm going to start by briefly introducing you to, beginning with Shay, who is a queer, gender nonconforming Nigerian artist. Shay raises awareness around social issues through digital video, multimedia, photography, ritual, and writing workshops. With the LP, Shay was a fellow in 2014 and an artist in residence in 2019, where we commissioned the project entitled the Afro Mystic Experimental Project. It's a long-going and multimodal body of work. We're super excited that we got to play a small part in supporting this vision. In the chat, Tiara has shared Shay's website. So Rochelle Jamila Wilbon is a healing and movement artist based between Chickasaw Land in Memphis, Tennessee, or also known as Memphis, Tennessee, and Lenape-Hoken Land, also known as Brooklyn, New York. Rochelle believes liberation and healing co-created with the earth is all of our birthrights. And as I shared, Rochelle is currently an artist in residence, but was also a fellow in 2020. So yeah, I guess for both of you, I guess you can decide who wants to go first. Either Shay or Rochelle, but the question is for you to just share some of your takeaways from both the fellowship and residency program. And if there's anything you would have wanted to know before participating in either of those, in either of those programs, you can share that with us briefly.
You want to go, Rochelle?
Sure, thank you. Wow, I have so much to say, so I'm gonna try to keep it concise. I did the fellowship, or was planning to do the fellowship in person, and then COVID hit, And so I just want to shout out Create Change for holding the space for my artistic practice and all of the fellows' artistic practice through such a tumultuous period of time. And that's really, for me, I've been in the fellowship and the residency throughout this pandemic. So for me, that's like been probably the biggest takeaway, is feeling really held as an artist that's doing work that centers community through such an unstable and unprecedented time. And the rigor of the fellowship program, like, gave me so much to chew on when there was so much already happening. So yeah, I think it really offered me tools and community to constantly ask myself questions of what it means to arrive, what it means to offer something, what it means to create. And also, I'm a dance artist, and so what it means to do all that in this time virtually, it's a lot to figure out. And I feel like the fellowship really gave me and Ogemdi, my partner for the project, for the residency, it gave us a very solid foundation to continue returning back to. Still, every time we talk, I'm like, okay, let's go to our asset map. Okay, let's figure out like what's not working. How can we listen more deeply? What is it that like people actually need? We're doulas, we're serving birthing people, bleeding people. Like, what is it they actually need, rather than like, oh, we want to show up and be like, let's dance with everyone. So yeah, I could talk so much more. I'm happy to answer any questions people have, but I cannot sing the praises of this program, of both programs, enough.
Sweet. I have two different interactions with the Laundromat Project because I was a fellow and then I was also a resident. And what I'll say that I think what really pushed me as a fellow is really looking at the way that my social justice and my art practice was going to meet, and really always making sure that community was at the center of that, you know, and it was like really looking at like doing deep listening in the South Bronx to be able to like make sure like our talents, because I was part of a cohort in the South Bronx, and how we were able to just really work well with each other. So we had to figure out our relationships and what was our relationship to the South Bronx, and how were we making sure that when we were entering in ways that met people's needs. And I think I'm happy to say that we were really able to like support there being a hub for a period of time in the South Bronx, because a lot of like space came out of the South Bronx, and the work that got done there in the garden and whatnot. And so that just came through our willingness to continue to go back, because not I was living in the South Bronx, but not everybody else were. So it was really interesting to have people from all different 5 boroughs almost being a part of this. But yeah, I'll say that that's what was really important, is really looking at like how there was a practice of like my activism, my artwork and community to be able to do the work as the resident, as the fellow, and then being able to come in to look at like, okay, so I've been, bridged in doing this work that's about like community and centering that. How do I center a little bit more of my talent, right? In terms of like doing the residency, but also still making sure community, and then that was bridging spirituality and social justice was at the center of that. And so that was exciting. And then I think also because I was left to my own devices, it got really expansive. And so one thing I will say that I wish I had known earlier is that less is more, right? Because I was doing things in like 2 boroughs and really making sure like there was these workshops and trying to save the world of Brooklyn and the Bronx in like 6 months. It was too much. So that's something I would say that I really learned in terms of the really being like a resident. It's just really like scaling things back and really looking at, okay, I've listened. How do I make sure that these workshops that I'm doing with community is able to meet everybody's needs and not overstretching myself because I'm trying to, save the world, for lack of a better term. But what I really did also like about the residency was also just the ability to experiment with different things. Because I'm mostly a documentary filmmaker, but I got to bring in a lot of multimedia elements and also experiment with theater. So I'll stop there, but I recommend doing them both if you can, and keep applying until you get in. So.
Wow, thank you both. That was really wonderful. One, it's great to just see you both. And I know you're currently in the current cohort, Rochelle, but yeah, we don't have any more workshops. So again, it's great to see you both. Thank you for sharing those reflections. In particular, thank you, Shay, for bringing up definitely, I know how rigorous you were working across 2 boroughs, and within, at a time when the residency was definitely 6 months. Your year was the last year that we kept the residency in that similar 6-month format. But yeah, thank you both. I appreciate it. I guess now we're opening it up to any questions, comments, or reflections you all may have. Shay, Rochelle are generous enough to make themselves also available, so you can also address questions to them as well. Atoy, TR, are we just pulling things from the chat, or can folks go off mute as well?
I would say feel free to go off mute in addition.
We're all here to support in any questions you may have.
Yes, hello. My name is Ibi, and I have a question. First of all, thank you so much for this presentation. I learned a great deal, and also thank you for the participating artists who reflect on their experience. I just have a quick question. Initially, from the start, I wanted to ask if someone can apply for both the residency and also the fellowship, but also Tiara kindly listed that if you apply for the residency, you can also suggest whether you'd like to be considered for the fellowship or not. In my case, the idea I have for the residency is different than the idea I have for the fellowship. They're revolving around the same community, but the idea is a bit different. Would you recommend for me to submit 2 applications, given that we have 2 weeks left for the deadline? Thank you so much. I'm really excited about this opportunity, and thanks again.
Yeah, I can take that one on. Yeah, so we would recommend that you submit an application for the residency. Because of what I mentioned before, you'll see kind of a checkbox question that says, are you willing to be considered for the fellowship? And because a good amount of the questions overlap, your residency application rather will give us all of the information that we need to know about you as an applicant and more to consider you for the fellowship program. So the best course of action is definitely not to split your time and energy on both applications, but to focus all your energy on that residency application and make sure that you check that box that you are indeed interested in considering the fellowship as well.
I will do that. Thank you so much. This is very helpful. Thanks a lot.
No problem. And feel free to come off mute if anyone has any more questions.
Or drop them in the chat if it's easier for you.
Hi, thank you so much for hosting this session. I really appreciate you. I know it's very helpful. And when you go to submittable, there are a few questions. It sets word count limitation and some of them don't. For those questions, doesn't have any limitation. Is it as much as I want? Or if you could clarify a little bit, that would be super helpful. Thank you so much.
Yes, okay, so there are some questions that are going to have word limits, and I think those questions the word limits are kind of just to help focus attention on the questions that we are, wanting, or at least leaving room for you to elaborate on within your application. So they might be the ones that could be more dense, like your project proposal, for example, right? That is going to encompass, like for the residency, the entire year's worth of work, right? So that'll be something that will have more spaciousness to it. And then we have kind of smaller questions that, for example, like describe the communities that you want to work within. Like that question is, although related to your project, right? Doesn't necessarily need the same spaciousness. I don't know if there's any other portions of the question that you want to address. Anybody else on the team? I'm not sure if I fully answered your question.
Yeah, I think Yuko was particularly wondering if for the questions that didn't have a word limit, does that mean there's like open range to just to write as long as one wants? I mean, I would say, yeah, I mean, yes, if there's no, I guess, on the technical front, if there's no word limit, I guess, yes, you can be as long form as you need, but I would definitely always push for more concise and more brevity in one's response. But yeah, I don't know if that's helpful, Yuko, if you want to.
Yes, that is super helpful. No, I promise I won't write a novel about it. Thank you so much. That was super helpful.
You're welcome. Awesome. Well, if there's no more questions, do we want to do the closing and share our contact information so folks can get in touch with us directly?
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we'll be posting this recording on our YouTube channel. Just bear with us a couple of days so we can get all that settled. So you can revisit this. And of course, if you have any particular questions, feel free to reach out to us at the email on the screen, and we're happy to answer those. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And we're really looking forward to looking at your application and and learning more about your practices, and excited to hopefully get to meet you in the near future. So thanks so much. And with that, thank you, Rochelle. Thank you, Seyi. Thank you, Lady Sasha and Tiara, for being here today and your thoughtful walkthrough and talking about the projects and so forth. So thank you. Appreciate you all. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.